They called me a housekeeper at my sister-in-law's glamorous engagement, but I left with my power intact. But before I share my story, please take a minute of your precious time to support our channel. Your support and love keeps us going. At my husband's sister's engagement party, the tag pinned to my dress said, "Service Crew." His mother drifted up beside me, with a smile sharpened to a blade. "You're just staff tonight. No seat, no setting, no place." My husband chuckled loud enough for the nearest table to hear. "Dinner is for family." I straightened, slid off my ring, a piece he'd chosen more for show than sentiment, and set it in my palm. "Then I won't be yours." His grin cracked. That was the opening note, not the finale. Quentin never realized I was home when he called his mother from our bedroom, the speakerphone carrying every word down the hall. "You were right, Ma. She needs to learn where she fits," he said, and I froze in the doorway with a basket of folded towels against my hip. The service crew idea is perfect. After tonight, maybe Verina will stop acting like that little consultancy of hers counts for anything. Their laughter drifted out like cigar smoke. I eased the basket onto the runner and walked into my home office, the room everyone in that family pretended didn't exist. On the top shelf sat a red binder I'd labeled contingency. Inside, 6 months of receipts, mirror drives, and quiet notes on Quentin's reallocations at Peachtree Ridge Capital. I had prayed I'd never need it. I opened a fresh document and began drafting an anonymous submission to the SEC while my husband plotted my public downgrade 50 feet away. Those towels in the basket had come from his dry clean pile, shirts pressed exactly the way he liked, collars stiff enough to salute. I'd kept his routines for 5 years, not because we couldn't afford help, but because Quentin insisted ritual proved devotion. The same devotion that had me up at 5:40 every morning brewing Ethiopian roast while skimming cash flow breakouts for businesses on life support. He never knew that before sunrise I was negotiating out of court with creditors, retuning menus and payrolls, and building models that governed whether whole staffs kept their paychecks. My office had evolved into a command post over the last 3 years. Dual screens lit a labyrinth of spreadsheets from Blue Cedar Bistro, a family restaurant bleeding $26,800 a month. The owner, a broad-shouldered man with a soft voice named Theo, had called me in tears one night. "My mama's recipes if we close, that's our whole name gone." Their cost of goods hovered near 58% when their neighborhood demanded them under 33. 3 vendors had crept prices upward for years without a fresh bid. The menu still chased nostalgia, while the block had filled with young professionals who wanted fast, quality weekday lunches and shareable weekend plates. I'd already sketched the fix, rebalance portions, renegotiate supply, implement a digital ordering rail, and funnel traffic through partnerships with 2 nearby salons and a gym. I did the work for a fraction of what the big firms quoted. According to Quentin, though, Bridge and Banyan Advisory was a hobby with invoices. The red binder felt heavier than paper. 6 months prior, I'd noticed misalignments in Quentin's desk files. He'd grown careless, leaving Peachtree Ridge binders open, assuming I was too busy with my side hustle to parse term sheets. But numbers tell on people. Charges labeled as portfolio company client development turned out to be weekend suites and jewelry. A sequence of transfers ran investor dollars through a daisy chain of LLCs that dead-ended in accounts he controlled. Financial engineering, except the only product built was Quentin's lifestyle. I'd photographed everything, encrypted it, and paid for a quiet consult with a litigator named Patrice Glenn, a former federal prosecutor who did not blink easily. "This is a felony pattern," she'd said, flipping pages with one manicured finger. "When you're ready, it ends his career." I had wanted never to be my answer. But apparently marriage in the Arnett household meant planning my humiliation while I ironed their image. From the bedroom, Quentin's voice settled into planning mode. The parties at Magnolia Hall. Solelay's marrying into serious money with Dorian Miles, private equity adjacent. It's time Verina understood the difference between real paper and a whatever she plays with. Verina, my mother-in-law, laughed through the speaker. They discussed it all. The service crew, badge set aside at check-in, the missing chair at our table, the slow, curated reveal. She did save your father's plant, Verina conceded, but help is still help. That doesn't make her a peer. 18 months earlier, their family's manufacturing company, Arnett Fabrication, had been weeks from bankruptcy. Consultants wanted $420,000 just to diagnose the bleeding. I took the job for $145,000 and turned their lines toward air filtration housings at the exact moment hospitals clamored for them, cut waste streams worth $175,000 a month, and renegotiated a union addendum without a single picket line. 240 workers kept their checks and schedules. Verina had visited once, wrinkling her nose at the break room where I ate stew with the shift leads. All this grime, she'd whispered. So unbecoming of the Arnett name. The name survived because I refused to let it fold. Thursday dinners at Verina's Buckhead home were endurance marathons. I arrived at 7, always on time, usually with a blackberry buckle she pretended not to devour. Verina keeps busy with that boutique. What do you call it? Bridge and Banyan, she'd tell her guests. Adorable. Meanwhile, we had just crossed 7 figures in annual billings. I built that firm from our dining table with $4,200 in scraped-together savings. 52 cold calls. 51 rejections. 1 tentative yes from a sandwich shop that agreed only because I offered the first assessment free. The owner's niece rolled her eyes when I walked in, young black woman in a blazer, not the gray-haired expert they'd pictured. 2 months later, their costs dropped 31%, the reorder cadence matched real demand, and a simple ad spend on neighborhood platforms brought in customers under 40. They told everyone, the bakery up the block, the go-go bar facing closure, the Caribbean spot considering layoffs. Within 6 months, I had 9 clients. Within a year, I recruited Ian Merrick, a wizard from a global firm who'd grown tired of PowerPoints that never touched a shop floor. Now we ran 19 active turnarounds and kept a wait list. To Quentin, success lived in glass towers. Premium carry or it didn't happen, he loved to say. Meanwhile, my work built things that breathed. I saved the SEC draft and opened a new file, a timeline of every misstatement and diversion, with exhibits labeled and cross-indexed. If we need to move Monday, Patrice had said, I'll be ready by sunrise. 2 Saturdays later, Atlanta wore its early autumn chill like a well-cut coat. I stood before the mirror at 6:15, the black dress smooth and firm against my ribs, makeup applied not for sparkle, but for armor. Quentin had left hours earlier for client drinks. He'd kissed my cheek in the foyer and told me he'd meet me at Magnolia Hall. The casual calculation of making me arrive alone did not even register on his face. I drove myself through Midtown, the car warm with the faint citrus of the leather conditioner Quentin insisted on monthly. At every light, I checked my phone. Confirmations from Ian that our mirror drives were complete, a note from Patricia that filings were queued, a message from our IT lead that Project Lantern, our code name for the full plan, was standing by. Magnolia Hall's ballet lanes were a parade of over-polished metal. I slipped between a gray Aston Martin and a pearl-white Maybach. Inside, the lobby gleamed, a cathedral for people who measured their worth in limited partners. I walked past a knot of men from Quentin's firm, their laughter bright and brittle. That's her, one whispered, not low enough. The one who plays consultant. Quentin lets her keep busy, another replied, as if I were an after-school club. The check-in table wore ivory linen and a practiced smile. Name? The young woman asked, pearls glinting at her throat. Raina Bishop. Her smile held. Her fingers flicked down the list. Then the smile faltered. A second pass. A third. Color crept into her cheeks. Could you repeat it? Raina Bishop. She glanced beneath the table and drew out a badge set apart from the others. She slid it forward just as Verina materialized on my left in champagne silk, precisely on cue. The badge read in looping script. Bishop, service crew. Oh, Raina, Verina said, voice pitched perfectly to Carrie. Your staff tonight. Conversation stuttered. Glasses paused midair. A hedge funder actually pivoted to get a better view. Someone lifted a phone. I picked up the badge like evidence, weighing its expensive cardstock between two fingers. This had been ordered, proofed, paid for, no clerical error. Shall I show you the back entrance? Verina asked sweetly. The team usually uses the loading dock. I clipped the badge to my dress with steady hands and walked into the ballroom. Table 4 sat where everyone could see it, near enough to the head table to suggest importance, far enough from the exits to discourage retreat. 8 settings. 7 chairs. A deliberate gap where my seat should be. Performance art, designed by cowards. I stood beside that empty space and watched the realization spread. First a glance at my badge, then a crowded whisper, then the ripple of faces turning to watch what I would do. Quentin arrived 40 minutes late with a loose swagger of 3 bourbons. His collar showed a makeup smear he'd tried to wipe away. The air around him held a perfume I didn't wear. He took in the room, my badge, the missing chair, his mother's easy smile, his partners at Peachtree Ridge watching from 2 tables over, and he laughed. Not nervously, pleased with himself. Relax, Reina, he said, reaching for the wine already poured at his place. Dinner is for family. 5 years of marriage. 19 months since I saved his father's plant. Scores of paychecks preserved. Not family enough for a chair. There's a precise click when an illusion breaks. It's not heartbreak. It's recognition. I reached for my ring, held it so the chandelier caught it, and laid it on the linen in front of his plate. The tiny sound of metal on china carried farther than it should have. Heads lifted. Forks stilled. Then I'm not yours, I said. His laughter died mid-breath. Embarrassment. Fury. The dawning edge of fear as he realized the spectacle was not mine, it was his. I turned and walked toward the doors. Behind me, chairs scraped and voices rose. Verina's command cut through the murmur. Quentin, do something. As if I were a stain to be blotted. I didn't look back. The garage felt like a sanctuary after that ballroom. I sat in my car with my hands on the wheel and let the quiet reach my spine. Then I called Ian. He answered on the 3rd ring. Execute lantern, I said. A beat. Understood, he replied, voice sober. Asset holds initiating. Mirror archive sealed. SEC packet staged. We're live. 6 months earlier, I had brought a banker's box to Ian's office. Copies of doctor reports, transfers, paper trails that curled back to Quentin. Ian had paged through each folder, his jaw set. He's playing with prison, he said. That day we built Lantern, every step we'd take when humiliation became untenable. ETA on the account locks. I asked. Within the hour. Patricia's team is synchronized. I headed home through quiet streets. Lights glowed in windows where families lingered over cake and blessings. I parked, poured exactly 1 glass of red, and opened my laptop. The SEC's portal crawled across my screen as if testing my resolve. I didn't need encouragement. 29 files sailed through. Misallocations from Peachtree Ridge Fund 3, personal expenses disguised as diligence, falsified dashboards, the whole deceit mapped and labeled. My phone buzzed. Quentin. I let it draw itself out to voicemail. Again. At attempt 12, curiosity nudged me to listen. Reina, this is silly. You made your point. Call me back. Polished. Controlled. A voice he used to tame investors. The 13th. We need to discuss this rationally. You're being emotional. By the 16th, the mask slipped. The partners have questions. Do you understand what you're doing? You're destroying everything we built. We? The part of me that still ached almost laughed. I closed my eyes, counted to 5, and kept uploading. At dawn, the doorbell rang. Patrice stood on my stoop in a navy suit, leather briefcase in hand, hair immaculate, eyes alert. She had already driven down from her place near Alpharetta. Let's talk options, she said, spreading folders across my dining table like a general laying out a campaign. Folder 1. Infidelity, documented by an investigator whose work needed no embellishment. Receipts from the Peachtree Grand Hotel, footage from a side entrance, credit card timestamps a novice could reconcile. One woman's name surfaced more than the rest, a senior associate at Peachtree Ridge, engaged to someone else yet flexible with boundaries. The prenup's fidelity clause is unequivocal, Patrice said, tapping a paragraph. Breach forfeits his claim to your company, your accounts, and triggers damages. Folder 2. The financial trail. Investor money diverted. Returns massaged. Federal territory. Patrice murmured. Once we file, the train doesn't stop. Folder 3. Verina's secret. Funds moved offshore during her divorce from Quentin's uncle. Patrice had found $2.1 million tucked in the right kind of island. If her ex's attorney moves, she said, your mother-in-law's social life will go into insolvency with her accounts. We planned through lunch. The map was brutal, legal, and clean. That night, the door buzzer startled me. Solelay stood in the lobby, wearing an oversized Spellman hoodie and sneakers, face scrubbed of makeup, eyes raw. The diamond on her finger, an ice-bright oval, flashed when she pushed hair from her face. I think I'm making a mistake, she whispered when I opened the door. I ushered her in before the neighbors could place her. We made tea, not bags, but loose leaves steeped until the kitchen smelled like Sunday, and I let her talk. Dorian wanted to get married immediately before his company crossed a threshold. He'd grown angry when she asked to let her attorney review his prenup. Angry wasn't exactly the word, she corrected. Pressured was truer. Dorian's startup, VantagePay, claimed to be remaking small business payment rails across the South. Quentin had mentioned its insane growth, twice, eyes bright with the scent of a deal. Something in Solelay's voice made my consultant's instincts hum. After she left, I did what I do best. Followed the numbers past the gloss. On paper, VantagePay had 1.7 million users, quarter-over-quarter growth clocking in at 38%, and partnerships with 3 banks. My calls told a different story. Contacts at 2 of those banks had never heard the company's name. The growth line looked engineered, not lived. By morning I had my answer. A scaffolding of bots, letters of intent dressed as signed deals, and a burn rate that would crater within the quarter. Marry fast, tap the trust, coast through the fall, that was the plan. I documented everything. But telling Solelay required timing and care. People cling tighter to lies when they're told bluntly what they don't want to hear. 3 days later, Verina called me directly about a small hitch with estate matters. Only $46,000 by month's end, she said, voice syrupy. My accounts are in transition. You understand. I told her to send me the IRS paperwork, so I could pay the Treasury directly. Silence stretched like a wire. It's simpler if you transfer it to me, she chirped. I made the transfer and hired a forensic accountant that afternoon. He came back with a tidy report. During a previous divorce, Verina had parked money offshore and sworn poverty in court. Of course she had. By Friday night, Quentin's calendar showed another emergency partner meeting at the Peachtree Grand. He returned smelling like an ad that promised things money can't purchase. His statements, accounts I reconciled because he found bill pay beneath him, showed 2 room service breakfast charges and a champagne line item. I filed them away in the red binder, without a word. The invitation to Solelay's engagement party arrived by courier the following week, heavy card with gold debossing. Addressed to Mr. Quentin Arnett. When I held it up at dinner, he barely looked up from his phone. Probably just a detail, he said. Of course you're coming. Keep it understated. Don't outshine the bride. Understated. As if I could steal their spotlight simply by existing. The day of the party, I chose a black dress that could go to a business dinner or a wake. It did not know it was dressing for both. You know what happened next. The badge. The empty chair. The ring. The walk. The call to Ian, then Patrice. Lantern breathing to life. By midnight, 17 missed calls dotted my lock screen. At 2 in the morning, I switched my phone to silent, closed my laptop, and slept through the first full night in months. When morning came, the sun poured into my office like a verdict. I brewed coffee, checked our mirrored drives, and opened the SEC portal once more. I was done asking for a seat. I was building the room. By Monday at 8 on the dot, consequences began to arrive like certified mail. First came Verina. Her voicemail shook so hard the words scraped. You petty little climber, do you know what you've done? An attorney for her ex-brother-in-law had filed emergency motions at dawn. The offshore accounts Patrice uncovered were locked. The petition demanded repayment of $2.1 million plus penalties. The country club that had catered to Verina for 2 decades suspended her membership by lunchtime. The same lobby where she'd perfected her wave now held a banker's box with her locker contents, tennis whites folded like surrender flags. Next came Quentin. Ian pinged me an email link, security footage from Peachtree Ridge's glass-walled floor. The angle showed Quentin stepping into his office early, coffee in one hand, jacket half on. He opened his laptop, read something that must have been the SEC notice, and unraveled in 30 seconds flat. Shock, fury, then a throw that spider-webbed his own glass with a sick pop. 3 junior analysts froze in the hall, phones raised. By noon the clip had a hashtag #ArnettUnplugged, and a classical soundtrack someone with too much time had laid under it. Former associates commented with stories about tantrums and disappearing budgets. Limited partners asked the only question that matters to people who lend. Is he safe with our money? I watched twice, not for schadenfreude, but to timestamp the precise instant he realized his reputation wasn't a suit he could just change. By Wednesday, Solelay texted me a screenshot from the family chat. Verina, in her voice of porcelain denial, Magnolia Athletic has made a small mistake regarding my account. It will be resolved immediately. It would not. Security had escorted her out after she tried to explain at the desk. Someone's aunt caught a full-color photo of Verina clutching the box. Thursday, Ian arrived at my office with the look he saved for opportunities disguised as mess. Magnolia Hall is drowning, he said, spreading aging profit and loss printouts across my desk. Bad contracts. Worse leadership. If they don't offload the property this month, the lenders will swallow it. The same ballroom where they'd pinned a service crew badge on me was listing like a ship. How much? I asked. They're asking $1.8 million, he said, but a decisive buyer could close at $740,000 if it's clean cash. We can route it through our community holding, keep press noise low until we set policy. I stared at the numbers and felt something click into place that wasn't anger. It was redesign. To own the space of my humiliation and repurpose it, yes. Draft the papers, I said. We don't haggle. We transform. Ian smiled, small, satisfied. Already in motion. Transfer of existing bookings included. He tapped the list. Verina's pet gala is on the calendar for December. We'll honor what's paid, I said, under new rules. No degrading badges, no missing chairs, no tears of dignity. Post the new policy at every entrance. And the ownership, he asked. Make it visible, I said. People behave better in a room that belongs to everyone. That afternoon, my phone lit with an unknown number and a short text. He's calling me nonstop. I'm cooperating with the SEC tomorrow. I kept receipts. I'm sorry. The name below, it was Kiana Rutledge, the senior associate from Quentin's floor, the one whose lipstick shade seemed to live on his collars. Even the woman he'd styled as a secret was abandoning the sinking boat, walking a statement into federal hands. I opened a new email thread to the CEOs of 3 portfolio companies where Bridge and Banyan had contracts through Peachtree Ridge. Subject line: Material concern regarding fund allocations. I attached receipts, dates, and the simplest language the truth allows. By 9:30, my phone buzzed with an urgent call from Michael Wu at Beacon Logic, his voice stripped to the wire. Reina, please tell me this is fake. It isn't, I said. Your Q2 consulting spend paid for hotel suites. We've authenticated every receipt. He exhaled like a tire shot on a highway. Board's convening today. Stay close. Peachtree Ridge's emergency board meeting began at 11. I was in that room, but Michael ducked into a quiet stairwell twice to whisper updates. Someone had tallied $2.9 million misallocated over 17 months. The firm's general counsel looked like a man tasting metal. By 3:15, it was done. Quentin placed on immediate leave, equity frozen pending investigation, credentials revoked on the spot. and in turn filmed him loading a cardboard box under the watch of 2 security guards who didn't blink. The office that had once made him feel bulletproof now hosted his career's small funeral. That evening, Solelay called, this time not crying from confusion, but shaking with fury shaped by relief. She'd confronted Dorian with the evidence I'd helped her compile. He did what liars do first, denied, gaslit, flattered, prayed. When she showed him the dead bank partnerships, the bot-built user base, and the prenup clause that ring-fenced her trust for his runway, he folded. He begged to marry fast so spousal privilege might muzzle her later. Solelay ended the engagement with a 2-sentence text to the group thread. Block. 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 You saved me from marrying a headline, she said softly. From watching Marshall's inventory my furniture. At 2:08 a.m., my doorbell camera woke my phone. Quentin swayed on my porch, tie askew, jaw tight. He alternated between pounding and pleading, from we can fix this to it was just a joke, the badge, to the tired refrain, I love you. The camera caught every slur and stagger, each threat to bury my firm. Evidence for the restraining order Patrice filed at Courthouse Open. Saturday delivered a final turn of the screw. Ian, at my kitchen table with coffee and a stack of property records, said, you won't believe where Verina landed. He slid me a listing, a 1-bedroom walk-up near a bus line in South DeKalb. The note, receptionist, Bright Smile Dental, $16 per hour with benefits. The woman who'd announced to a ballroom that I was just staff now answered phones and verified insurance numbers for families who didn't know or care about charity galas. At the practice, she went by V. Whitman. Reinvention has a way of subtracting last names. I didn't laugh. I did stand a little straighter. On Monday, we signed for Magnolia Hall. The pen moved across paper like a clean cut, and the deed slid from a ledger of grudges into my care. We scheduled a press briefing for Wednesday at 2, an hour I chose with intention. That was the exact time Verina's planning committee had slated its final run-through. In daylight, the ballroom looked smaller, almost warm. I stepped to the podium and spoke the policy into being. Effective immediately, I said into the microphones, Magnolia Hall will treat every guest with equal dignity. No hierarchical seating charts. No labels designed to shrink people. Names are names. That's it. I held up the new sample badges. White, simple, unfussy. A quiet revolt. We're also launching Neighbors Night. Once a month, this venue hosts milestone events for working families free of charge. Weddings. Graduations. Citizenship celebrations. Beauty belongs to everybody. A reporter from the Journal-Constitution asked the question I knew was coming. What about existing bookings, particularly December's benefit? We honor contracts that honor our standards, I said. Events that cannot will receive full refunds and our best wishes elsewhere. On cue, my phone vibrated with Patrice's call as the cameras packed up. Federal findings just hit the docket, she said. Misappropriations worse than we thought. They've tagged $2.9 million and change across Fund 3. Both vehicles. U.S. Attorney's Office is interested. They'll take it all, I said, not a question. They'll take enough, she replied. Townhouse, cars, the boat at Lake Lanier, watches, anything acquired with tainted funds. His legal retainers burning at $360,000 and climbing. The family trust is a skeleton. That afternoon, an unexpected email landed from Helena Rhodes, senior partner at Peachtree Ridge, the woman who once shook my hand like the air might stain her. Her subject line was a simple apology, her tone stripped of social varnish. I should have pressed harder months ago. I'm sending 12 CEOs your way, operators who value integrity over optics. They know what you did for our net fabrication. They want that kind of fix without the lies. 3 of those 12 signed within the week, 7-figure scopes that pushed Bridge and Banyan into a new orbit. I posted 2 new roles that Friday, a supply chain specialist from an auto plant and a number-savvy former chef who understood margins down to the ounce. That evening, I slipped into the Women of the South in Business conference at the Hilton without a nameplate or a title, just a notebook. I wasn't slated to speak. Halfway through a panel on ethical decision-making, the moderator announced an unscheduled voice. Solelay walked onto the stage in a plain navy suit, hair in a coil, the glitter gone from her gaze. She introduced herself without pedigree, told her story without whining. "I almost tied my life to a fraud," she said, "and the only person who told me the truth was the one my family tried to call staff." She pointed to me, where I sat in the third row. Verina Bishop reminded me that family is what protects you, even when blood embarrasses you. 500 women stood. The applause lived in my ribs for hours. Late, after the conference, I walked Magnolia Hall with the facilities team prepping for Neighbors' Night. Our first will be a ceremony for 28 new citizens and their families. The chandelier light felt different knowing no one would stand beside an empty chair under it again. I ran my palm along the edge of a round table. No head, no hierarchy, and let the quiet hold. Back at the office, between my framed first check from that stubborn sandwich shop and my degree, a small shadow box hung under new glass. Inside lay the badge that started everything, Bishop, Service Crew. I mounted it not as a wound, but as a thesis. Clients always asked about it. I told them the short version. This was meant to shrink me. Instead, it sized the room I would build. The next morning, Patrice called with the freshest development. Quentin, through a court-appointed attorney now that his retainers had smoked, sent a letter from Birmingham, where he'd taken a junior analyst role at a boutique nobody in Midtown bragged about. He lived in his parents' guest room. The letter swerved between rewriting history and wheedling. Misunderstood badge. Mother's mistake. Please consider withdrawing cooperation. Patrice asked how to answer. 2 letters, I said. And then O. She laughed. Concise. I'll file something equally elegant. At sunrise the following day, I stood in my new place, a corner loft in the old 4th Ward that smelled faintly of sawdust and sunrise, barefoot, in thick socks, planning Bridge and Banyon's expansion to Detroit and Baton Rouge. We'd mapped 36 high-need businesses between the two cities, shops and plants and kitchens that only needed someone to treat their numbers like surviving depended on them. Because it does. My phone chimed with a message from Solelay, a photo from her business ethics seminar at Morehouse, where she guest lectured on red flags in personal finance. Using our story to keep people safe, she wrote. That okay? It's ours, I replied. Make it a lighthouse. Somewhere across town, Verina, now, was printing a schedule for root canals and cleanings, answering phones with the same voice she used to level me in a ballroom. Somewhere down I-20, Quentin was learning how to take instruction and live small. And here, at my desk, I outlined a year in which we would turn small businesses into strong ones and rooms built for hierarchy into circles. They taught me place. I built a world without their map. By the following week, the dominoes weren't just toppling, they were rolling downhill, collecting speed and crushing everything Quentin and Verina thought untouchable. The fall of Quentin. On Tuesday morning, footage leaked from Peachtree Ridge's emergency board session. The same office, where Quentin used to strut with cufflinks polished and voice booming, now held his dismantling. The camera caught him trying to argue with counsel, slamming binders, his face mottled with sweat. A junior partner muttered, "He's finished," and the mic picked it up. The clip spread like wildfire. Business blogs captioned it the Arnett collapse. Investors began whispering about clawbacks. By Friday, he was out. Indefinite suspension. All firm assets frozen. Personal accounts flagged for review. Security guards had escorted him through the lobby in front of colleagues who barely raised their eyes from their screens. His exit wasn't dramatic, just a cardboard box and the kind of silence people keep when they're watching a cautionary tale. Solelay's turn. That same evening, Solelay showed up at my townhouse again, but she wasn't the tearful girl from weeks earlier. She walked with her shoulders square, her phone in hand, a screenshot of messages from Dorian glowing across the screen. He admitted everything, she said. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with fury. The bots, the fake contracts, all of it. He begged me to marry him anyway, said I could protect him with spousal privilege. She laughed, short, bitter, like breaking glass. I told him I wouldn't marry a felon in training. Then she blocked him, wiped her cheeks, and for the first time in years looked like she believed her own reflection. "You saved me," she whispered. "Not just from him. From becoming like them." Verina's descent. By mid-October, Verina's name was a punchline. After her accounts froze and her club cut her loose, word slipped that she'd taken work as a receptionist at a dental clinic in Decatur. $16 an hour plus insurance. Ian showed me the property filings, her Buckhead mansion seized, Range Rover repossessed, the charity committee striking her name from its rolls. She'd reinvented herself as V. Whitman, divorced, starting over. The same woman who once smirked across linen-covered tables now answered phones in a vinyl chair. Karma has a way of rearranging seating charts. Magnolia Hall, reimagined. We closed the purchase that same month. Magnolia Hall, the ballroom where they stripped me of a chair, was now mine. Ian drafted the press release with my edits in red ink. No class-based seating. No humiliating labels. Monthly free use for working families celebrating milestones. At the press conference, I held up the new badge design, plain, simple, elegant. Every person who walks through these doors will be treated with equal dignity. No exceptions. Reporter scribbled. Flashbulb snapped. One journalist asked about December's gala. Verina's crown jewel. All existing contracts are honored, I said evenly, but only if they comply with our standards. Refunds have already been issued where they do not. That was the polite obituary of Verina's social empire. The expansion of Bridge and Banyan. Helena Rhodes kept her word. The 12 CEOs she introduced became a pipeline of serious contracts. 3 signed immediately, worth $1.5 million combined. I hired 5 new consultants, black professionals overlooked by the big firms, each brilliant enough to save companies, but tired of being background voices. We moved into a new loft office in Atlanta's West End, brick, glass, open light, close enough to the heartbeat of small business to remember who we worked for. On the wall, I hung the service crew badge in a museum-quality frame. Every client asked about it. I told the same story. This was meant to diminish me. Instead, it defined me. Don't ever let anyone write your title for you. The letter. One morning, Patrice called laughing softly. He sent you a letter. Quentin's words, delivered through a public defender's office in Birmingham, were half apology, half delusion. He claimed the badge was an accident, his mother's doing, a misunderstanding. He begged me to withdraw cooperation, promised to rebuild, swore he still loved me. How should I respond? Patrice asked. One word, I said. No. She chuckled. I'll file the legal version. A new table. That Friday night, I hosted dinner in Magnolia Hall, my hall. Not for partners or patrons, but for the people who'd stood with me when others tried to erase me. Ian, raising a glass of Chianti from Theo Romano's restaurant, the one I saved 2 years earlier. Patrice, with her trial bag still at her feet, too seasoned to put it down even for wine. Lisa Carter, whose bakery now had 2 thriving locations after we restructured her debt. And Solelay, glowing, not with diamonds, but with the quiet pride of a woman who'd chosen herself. We sat at a round table, no head, no hierarchy. We laughed about contracts, celebrated milestones, swapped stories of near collapses and hard-won recoveries. To resilience, Ian toasted. To Verina, Patrice added, who turned being called staff into the blueprint for a dynasty. The chandelier above us shone like new justice. The arrest in real time. By November, Quentin's life collapsed from whispers to headlines. It started with a leaked memo. Federal indictment expected for our net partner. The news pinged across every business feed before lunch. By dusk, a grainy clip surfaced of Quentin being led out of his parents' home in handcuffs, jacket half on, shouting at reporters, "This is a mistake." My wife set me up. His cries didn't sound like a man wronged. They sounded like a man drowning. I watched the broadcast in my office at Bridge and Banyan with the sound muted, sipping coffee that tasted richer than any toast to his success had ever felt. Magnolia Hall's first Neighbors' Night. The same weekend, Magnolia Hall hosted its first Neighbors' Night, A joint birthday party for 3 kids from a local elementary school whose families couldn't afford venues. The balloons were bright, the cake homemade, the music a playlist of joy. Standing in that ballroom, the same one where they once denied me a chair, I felt something click back into place. This wasn't just revenge. This was reclamation. This was proof the space could be rewritten. One mother clasped my hand before leaving. "Nobody ever gave us a hall like this," she said softly. "You gave us more than a room. You gave us dignity." It was worth more than any check Peachtree Ridge ever cut. Verina's isolation. Verina tried to claw her way back, but society is merciless with the fallen. Her friends avoided her at the grocery store. The country club rescinded her plaques. Even the women she once mentored whispered when she walked by. Solelay texted me one afternoon. She tried to crash a charity luncheon. They turned her away at the door. The image of Verina clutching her designer bag, faced with locked doors, was poetic. Once she had tried to bar me from entry. Now the world closed itself to her. The rise of Solelay. Meanwhile, Solelay was rising. She'd sold her engagement ring, paid down her student debt, and applied to business school. One Thursday evening, she forwarded me an email, acceptance into Emory's MBA program, full scholarship. She called me after midnight, her voice thick with gratitude. They said my essay on escaping financial fraud was the strongest submission. I wrote about you, Verina, about how you showed me that truth is protection. You did that yourself, I reminded her. But I won't lie. It filled me with something warm, something like pride. Quentin's desperation. Quentin, meanwhile, wasn't done. My lawyer Patrice forwarded me a string of motions he filed through public counsel, all pleading for leniency, all blaming me. One even accused Bridge and Banyan of sabotage. The judge dismissed them with a single line, unsupported by fact. At 2 a.m. one night, the doorbell camera pinged again. Quentin stood on my porch, tie askew, shouting at the lens, "You think you won? You'll regret this." His words slurred, his stance unsteady. I didn't answer. I simply saved the footage for Patrice to add to the restraining order. The man who once laughed while I stood badge-labeled and chairless was now a drunk shadow yelling at glass. A seat for everyone. 2 weeks later, Magnolia Hall hosted something new, a citizenship ceremony for 30 families. The ballroom shone with flags and laughter, the tables crowded with food from every continent. Each person who walked across the stage left with a certificate, a smile, and a seat at a round table where no chair was missing. I walked through the space afterward. Lights dimmed, chairs still scattered. The room smelled of rice, spices, and cake. I stood where I once placed my ring on linen and realized this was what it meant to reclaim not just a building but a narrative. The badge meant to humiliate me now hung in my office, framed behind glass, a relic of the night my old life ended and the real one began. Would you like me to continue with part 5, where Solelay steps into her own spotlight, Bridge and Banyan grows into a powerhouse, and Quentin's story reaches its final reckoning? By the start of the new year, Quentin's trial date was set. The charges read like a syllabus in corporate crime: wire fraud, embezzlement, falsified records. Patrice sent me the docket with a short note. He's looking at 20 years if convicted. The press painted him as a cautionary tale, once the face of a rising firm, now a disgraced partner who couldn't even afford his own lawyer. Every outlet replayed the video of him smashing his laptop, his downfall immortalized as both tragedy and meme. Meanwhile, his letters kept arriving, each one alternating between rage, denial, and pleas for forgiveness. I stopped opening them. Patrice filed them under evidence. By February, Verina, now V. Whitman, had settled into obscurity. Solelay forwarded me a candid photo someone posted online. Verina at the dental office, answering phones with a forced smile, her once polished nails bare. Gone were the galas, the imported champagne, the hand-stitched gowns. She now commuted by bus, lived in a one-bedroom near Decatur Station, and clipped grocery coupons. The woman who once declared me staff had become exactly that. Solelay, however, was blossoming. In March, she was invited to speak at a Women in Business forum downtown. I slipped into the audience quietly, sitting in the back row. She stood at the podium in a plain black suit, her voice steady. I was weeks away from marrying a man running a lie, and my own family was more concerned with appearances than my safety. The only person who told me the truth was the one they tried to label service crew. Her words pulled the audience to their feet. Applause thundered through the ballroom, and for the first time, Solelay looked like she believed in her own power. Afterward, she found me in the lobby. She hugged me tight and showed me an email on her phone. She'd been selected for a scholarship track focused on ethical leadership. I wouldn't be here without you, she whispered. No, I said, smiling. You wouldn't be here without you. I just held up a mirror. By summer, Bridge and Banyan was no longer my little project. We had offices in Atlanta and Detroit, a staff of 23, and contracts across industries, from restaurants to tech suppliers to nonprofits. Our reputation wasn't just about numbers. It was about integrity. CEOs came to us because they knew we wouldn't cook their books. We'd fix them. The firm Quentin mocked had become the one he'd begged to rebuild his resume. And Magnolia Hall, once a stage for my humiliation, was now a landmark of inclusion. Weddings, graduations, citizenship ceremonies, birthdays, every month the hall echoed with laughter, not whispers. The badge that had once read service crew was displayed proudly in the lobby, under glass, with a plaque beneath it. This building belongs to everyone. No one here stands without a chair. One evening, almost a year to the day after that infamous engagement party, I hosted a dinner at Magnolia Hall. Not a gala, not a networking event, just a round table of equals. Theo Romano, whose restaurant had survived bankruptcy. Lisa Carter, whose bakery now employed a dozen women. Ian, who toasted to resilience with a grin. Patrice, still fierce in her tailored suit, who'd never let me forget the power of preparation. And Solelay, radiant, laughing, no longer anyone's pawn. We ate, we talked, we remembered. And when the evening wound down, I looked around at faces that weren't connected by blood, but by choice, respect, and loyalty. That night, I understood the truth Verina and Quentin never could. Family isn't who claims you. Family is who protects you. The sun rose over Atlanta the next morning, painting the skyline gold. I stood in my office, barefoot, in flannel pajamas, reviewing our expansion plans for Baton Rouge. On the wall, the badge glinted in its frame. Once it had been my sentence. Now it was my declaration. They tried to assign me a place. Instead, I built a table where everyone had won. And that was the justice they never saw coming. And so, what began as an attempt to strip Verina of her dignity ended with an empire rebuilt on her own terms. The badge meant to belittle her became a symbol of resilience. The missing chair turned into a round table where everyone had a seat. Her enemies were undone by their greed, while those she chose as family thrived. If this story of betrayal, justice, and transformation left you inspired, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story of strength and survival. In the comments, tell us, what was the most satisfying moment of justice for you? Was it Quentin's public downfall, Verina's new reality, or Solelay stepping into her own power? We want to hear your thoughts. Because at the end of the day, stories like this remind us, dignity isn't granted, it's claimed.